Unprecedented territory, as Darren's just been saying.
Well, unprecedented in terms of a sitting Prime Minister being fined in this way. Of course, not unprecedented if you are one of the thousands of people across the country who were subject to these COVID fines during the height of the pandemic. What Darren was saying just before you came to me about police not retrospectively investigating these fines, that by and large was true. And it was one of these issues that actually chipped away at the leadership of the Met Commissioner, now the former Met Commissioner Cressida Dick. Remember, she did not want her force being involved in what would be a political storm, and of course eventually she and her force were bounced into having to investigate that because the public outcry was so very significant at that time. So ever since then they have been involved in this very detailed examination of multiple parties attended by multiple people, including some very senior figures indeed. And it has come as a shock, I think, for everybody today to hear that Rishi Sunak is one of those who has been issued with a fixed penalty fine. I think people thought that there was a significant chance that Carrie Johnson would be receiving a fine, but not necessarily Rishi Sunak, as for all we can see, the involvement of him was briefly in that birthday party when Boris Johnson received a cake, popping in to congratulate him. Certainly when he was questioned on this recently, he seemed quite blasé about it, didn't think there was any risk of him being issued with a fixed penalty notice at all. Well, he has now, along with the Prime Minister, and I guess all eyes are on him. He's pretty beleaguered at the moment because of what's been happening with his wife. Does he decide to just leave office? And that would put, of course, Boris Johnson in a very precarious position.
Mark, I guess what the Prime Minister's allies will say, are saying, will say till they're red in the face that it was unintentional. The Ministerial Code says you resign if you intentionally misled the House of Commons. Their point to the fact that Downing Street is a place of residence, it's his home as well as a place of work, as indeed it is for the Chancellor. And if senior civil servants broke these rules as well, clearly this wasn't necessarily a moral failing, however galling it seems to so many members of the public who did adhere to all the rules during lockdown, despite all the pain that caused them.
Yeah, those are well-worn arguments, but they are going to be aired again in the coming days and weeks. I'm not sure whether the Prime Minister or indeed his officials have the stomach to take this to appeal in the Magistrates' Court, because what's that going to do? It's only going to drag it out, and it's going to examine those events in minute detail, which will just give further ammunition to those opposed to him to heap further embarrassment on the Prime Minister. So I'm not sure that that is an avenue that realistically is open to them. So really the only avenue that is open to them is to try to argue, to reason with people, to suggest that yes, clearly by the letter of the law they broke the law under the COVID lockdowns that were imposed by this very Prime Minister. However, because of all the circumstances you just reiterated there, you just mentioned in terms of this being his own home, work events that were taking place late into the night because of the hours they were working, perhaps this is their avenue to try to reason their way out of it. But there's no doubt it will be very difficult for the Prime Minister in the days ahead. And as I say, it all depends on, I think, what happens to his neighbour in Downing Street now and how he decides to play this, because I think it's difficult to understate how much of a shock I think this will come to Rishi Sunak, because he clearly didn't think that he was at risk of actually being fined at the end of the day. He felt that his involvement in any of the activities around Partygate and the events that were taking place was very minimal and very, very short-lived. But clearly, weighing up all the evidence that the Metropolitan Police have done, they've spoken to multiple people, they've come to the conclusion that 50 people so far are in breach of the law, have broken the law as far as those COVID guidelines are concerned, and there may be others yet to come.